When I worked for Panorama, we undertook one investigation into the colour bar on the railways, because it was absolutely clear that the railways were not employing black people.
It's much harder for a West Indian to get a job in Britain today than it was a year ago. But how much of the trouble is due to colour prejudice? Is there any colour bar on British railways?
No, there is no colour bar on British railways.
I went down to the station master at a big London station.
This is Mr. Davis, the goods agent in charge of Smithfield Depot. How many vacancies have you at the moment?
It's 9 vacancies for staff at the moment.
Next day at Lambeth, I met 4 unemployed Jamaicans. They had been looking for work for weeks. They weren't skilled, but they could read and write, and as far as I could judge, they were intelligent and had good records. So I suggested that they should go to Smithfield to ask for the jobs which the manager had said were vacant. They went there on Thursday morning. They were turned down. I went straight back to Mr. Davis for another interview. Now, Mr. Davis, you have vacancies here.
Oh, yes.
But now, 4 coloured men came this morning to ask for jobs and they were turned away. Why was that?
I see.
I am a racist, and why? Who's made me a racist? This government, the Conservatives, and every sturdy, stinking cancer who sticks up for the nigger. And I'll stand by my words, because I don't like these people, never will do.
I was born in Stockwell, South London, and lived in Tooting with my mum and dad. My dad was from Nigerian background, my mum from South American, Guyanese. I had an older brother and my younger sister. Now, we grew up in quite a secure environment and wealthy, I would say. In those terms, we were quite affluent. But after my mum and dad divorced when I was young, from that point onwards, up until now, I grew up without a father. Now, one of the things that happened is that my social circle mirrored the reality I was going through. My friends themselves were all from single parent backgrounds. Their dads had either died or divorced. And they were a mixture of black, white friends, British, predominantly black. So we had what we would say today is a gang, but we didn't see it as that, and started doing all the same things together. Now, as I was growing up, one of the things that we had towards each other, and I thank Allah today for this, was a sense of loyalty and a sense of principles, which some were basic, but we adhered to them, we stuck to them. So, for example, we would not betray each other's trust in any shape or form. And there's some things I will go into and some things I won't go into because of that loyalty perspective. The school that I went to, they said that I was bright, I was doing well, but one of the issues that I had was having too many fights. And I remember my dad, when I used to go back home to him, was very upset about this. But that toughened me up in a sense, because it prepared me for what was going to start happening as we grew into our teenage life. Now, because of that sort of violent youth as a child, my parents didn't let me go to the school. Even though they're divorced, they'd agreed that I shouldn't go to the school in the local area of Tooting, Ernest Bevin, because they felt that my temperament would still be the same. So what they did first was they sent me to Clapham Common, a school there, Henry Thornton, an inner city school, again multicultural. I really enjoyed it, but they pulled me out of there after a year. Again, similar things with regards to fights, but not only that, they felt that academically the school was not suited to where they thought I should be. So what actually happened is they found a Roman Catholic school. My dad was a Roman Catholic. My mum had agreed during the marriage, after the marriage, that she would raise us as Catholics. So they found a school in Wimbledon, John Griffiths, Roman Catholic school, and there was my second, I think, cultural shock. Because when I went to that school, I was the only black boy in the class, and that stayed the same throughout the school. And at first I had to deal with a lot of racism, coming from South London, being the background, coming from the background that I came from. Obviously, anything racist that was said to me, I was fighting, always fighting. I wouldn't tolerate it. The racism that I experienced at the time was actually white on black. So that black and white racism was very, very apparent. There was the National Front, some would know it as the BNP now, and then you've got EDL and these groups here. But the National Front was an actual party that were against black people being in the UK, and they didn't hold us to be British whatsoever.
The left failed to stop the march in Leicester 12 days ago, and the front claimed it as a victory. John Tyndall is chairman of the National Front. He claims that the party is growing, but he won't reveal its total membership.
And now there has risen a force representing the will of the British people to be great again, which has proved time and time again, and will prove time and time again in the days and the years to come, that come all the red mobs, come all the threats, come all the violence, come all the insults, we will keep marching on, and they will stop us.
There's no doubting the extremist past of John Tyndall and the National Front's leaders. 12 years ago, he and Martin Webster were helping Colin Jordan set up the National Socialist movement in Britain. In 1962, Tyndall and Jordan were jailed for organising, training and equipping a paramilitary organisation, Spearhead. But in 1964, the National Socialists split and Tyndall and Webster formed the Greater Britain movement, which was specifically anti-black, anti-communist and anti-Jewish. In July 1964, the Kenyan president, Jomo Kenyatta, was assaulted in a London street. For this offence, Tyndall was fined and Webster jailed. In 1966, Tyndall was jailed for 6 months for illegal possession of a firearm, and in that year, he and Webster helped to organise the National Front.
When I was in my 20s, I was for a time associated with an extremist organisation, and this did turn out to be unwise, and I've always admitted it. I haven't tried to hide the fact. Many of my views have changed since that time, as they do.
Many of your views, of course, have remained the same.
Some of my views have remained the same, yes. I was always very patriotic, always a nationalist, and those views remain the same.
The National Front expresses its policy on immigration in this way. The repatriation by the most humane means possible of those coloured immigrants already here, together with their descendants and dependents.
Your policy is to send them home?
To send them home where possible, or at least to resettle them, if there's not an immediate home available, to resettle them somewhere in the world.
You see, to so many immigrants, this is home.
Well, it may be, but that is not what is regarded by the majority of the population.
You talk of compensation, do you see, but what happens when money fails to persuade the family to go
well,
to a place
we have made it perfectly clear that this is going to be something obligatory. It has to be.
You see, what sort of compulsion could you use? How can you make
the normal
compulsion?
The normal compulsion that you exercise when you deport anybody. There are all sorts of parallels in recent history. Large numbers of Palestinian Arabs were uprooted from their homes in the Middle East. Huge numbers of Germans were uprooted from their homes in what is now, what used to be Germany, what is now Poland. There have been cases of people in China, Tibetans and so on. There are all sorts of cases of people that have had to be resettled by far more brutal means than we advocate applying to the immigrants in this country, which I think are eminently fair.
But you wouldn't suggest that any of the three examples that you've just mentioned were ideal solutions?
No, certainly not, but they do at least show that these things this resettlement can be accomplished over a space of time.
You must see the practical problems here. You must, if you're serious about this policy, you must see that it is going to cause untold suffering and hardship and anguish. Of course I see the
practical problems. Of course I see, and I've said to you, that it could cause suffering. You say untold suffering. I only say that there is going to be more suffering in the future if the problem is not tackled.
When you're in power, will you frown on mixed marriages?
Yes, we're not in favour of mixed marriages.
How would you discourage them?
Well, that isn't something that we've come to any conclusions about at the moment. There are not an enormous number of mixed marriages in this country at the present time, and we would attempt to educate people into an understanding of the bad consequences of mixed marriages.
What, at school level and...
Yes, if necessary.
Do you believe that the white man is ethnically superior?
Yes, undoubtedly.
Do you think that you're going to see the day when the National Front forms a government in this country?
I don't just think, I'm sure of it.
So I'll give an example. One of the first racist experiences I had in school, when I first joined the school, the teacher, she was racist, Mrs. Hardiman. I remember her name well. And she was doing opposites. And she did this deliberately. So she was saying like, as hot as cold as. And that this was at the end of the lesson. So then she said, as white as, and they said as black as, and one of them, Dermot Larkin, he was a West Ham supporter, bootstraps, everything, DMs, everything, said as black as, and he looked at me and said, as black as Baker. My surname's Baker, so obviously he was saying in school we didn't call each other by first names. We'd call Baker, Smith, John. So he said, as black as Baker, being the only black guy in my class. Everyone started laughing. And that was my first week in school. So now what happened? Being from South London, coming from the background that I came from, I met this individual downstairs. Now after I dealt with him, an individual saw this guy's different. We've got to be careful with him. The racism that I experienced was the tail end of the racism that our parents had experienced when they came, for example, from Jamaica with the Windrush in the late 40s, the early 50s. It was the tail end of that, because we were now the second generation. We were British, born, bred British. So we saw that you heard those racist statements, just because a dog is born in a stable doesn't make it a horse. And like saying, so because we were born in the UK, being black people didn't make us British at all, you had to be white. It was inherent in the classroom, it was inherent in some of the ways that the teachers taught. Carried right the way through from me being in school to my teenage years. As we became teenagers from the age of 12, 13, being stopped and searched according to the sus laws.
Minorities began to speak out about language they found offensive. They are cool.
Come to me, it's not a disrespectful term to a black man, it's just a general term covering black people.
It's going around, it's on a paddock.
It's going in a corner. What the officer just said is this: he understands the word coon to mean a general term to cover coloured people.
Race relations was certainly there, and in a sense it was a very important one.
However, the police were far from delighted by Roy Jenkins' liberal agenda.
One of the most difficult meetings I've ever done in my life was a thing called the Metropolitan Police Boards had a sort of day out. They all turned up in Westminster Central Hall. But the one thing which really got them excited was when I said there is no doubt that we have to contemplate having a substantial black or coloured element within the police force. And they screamed for about 2 minutes then. Never forgotten that.
Being thrown in the back of police vans, being picked up off the underground, taken off the train station and taken into the back of cars. And then in one case there's a police station that's closed down now in Clapham, Nightingale Lane, where I used to live, where my mum and dad did first divorce. And there's a hut that's outside there and they called it the meat place. So they took me from Tooting after arresting me in Tooting on the high road, took me back there, and they just wanted to basically beat me up. That's all, beat a nigger. This was my normality and my friends' normality and many of us as black youths' normality during the late 70s, early 80s. I was released without charge. We didn't have social media. We weren't allowed a phone call. We didn't have mobile phones. I would turn up a few hours later, maybe my clothes torn, looking dishevelled, and I'd have to say to my mum, I spent another night in the cell, or I got arrested at this time. This went on. I cannot count the amount of times I was arrested from the age of 12 up until my 20s. So this racism that was there, you had that to contend with. You had other no-go areas. Like I was from Tooting. There used to be the Mitcham, which has got a lot of Muslims now, a lot of black people, Asians, everything like that. There was a particular part where there was a bandstand. And every time you'd go through on the bus, if you were going to Carl Shulton or somewhere, you had about 50 skinheads sitting there. And they would see you on the bus and start hurling abuse at you. And you might want to put the finger, in those days it was 2 fingers, but that was it. They'd jump on the bus and you're finished. These were the sort of things that we had to go through with regards to no-go areas. So South London for me, Tooting, Balham, Tooting Broadway, Collier's Wood, South Wimbledon. These were our areas. Going up to Brixton, we were happy there. We were safe. We knew the back roads and everything like this. And if skinheads, they wouldn't even come into the area. One time, 200 skinheads and mods came into Tooting Broadway. And I remember I was at home, and this is how tight we were as a community. My colleagues came running, bang, you could hear them shouting down the street, skinheads are here, they're at such and such a pub on Tooting High Road. Every black youth that I knew ran out of their houses, taking everything with them. And then there was a fight for 2 hours down at Tooting Broadway. And we liked it. You come into our area, Chelsea girl, the shop was caved in, one of our friends, I won't mention his name, picking up a skinhead and throwing him through the glass, saying this is our area, don't come here. That was the extent of the racism in those days. That was the extent of the racism. So we used to go, for example, as a 15, 16-year-old, if I was going to a nightclub, the sort of weaponry we would have to carry to put outside the nightclub for when we came out. And I'll give an example, and I'll move on from this racism after this. But I went to Carl Shulton Town Hall. They used to have discos for under 16s. We went one day, met our girlfriends there. At night when it finished, 11:30, 12 o'clock, many of my friends had gone. I was talking to a girlfriend, another friend of mine was talking to his girlfriend, and we came out expecting to see skinheads there because they weren't there. But what we saw were mods, long hair, their Parker jackets and everything. So we were chilled. That's why we didn't get on the buses. That's why our friends didn't come in their cars to pick us up to take us home, because we thought the skinheads aren't here, it's the mods. A mod were these stylish, fashionably dressed white people who drove mopeds, were into black music like this, and they used to fight the skinheads as well. So, but what happened? Those same mods that we thought they were when we went into the club, when we came out, they were in their Parkers, their long hair, with their mopeds. They saw all of the other black guys go, and I remember one of them looking at me. But what did they do? They pulled off the wig, they took off their Parker, and said, "You black bastard, it's us." Now, for us now, we were shocked. It's 2 of us. So I looked at my friend, I said, we've been done. We ran to Carl Shulton train station. The last train was going. We jumped on it and we saw the skinheads running. And they were laughing because they knew that they'd tricked us. Had they caught us, I don't know if I'd be here now telling this story, giving this account. Right. In school now, I was in the bright stream, the highest stream in my class, in my year, because they saw that Tony had something. I wasn't stupid. Remember that when I came from the other school, Henry Thornton, they moved me because the academic challenges, my mum and dad didn't feel there were any. So they moved me to this school. So after the cultural shock of being the only black guy in my class, I settled in, started working, and was doing very, very well. When it came to preparing for our O-levels now, which you call GCSEs now, I was in the top stream. I was doing 5, I was doing 9, but 4 of them I didn't want to do, so I dropped down to 5. And I remember I was so serious about my exams at that particular time that I remember praying in my room, saying to myself, look, I need to pass these exams. And that was the only time I remember praying sincerely, saying, please God, help me pass these exams and I'll do my best. And obviously I did that, I succeeded, and I didn't continue with God in that sense there. I just got into my road life and everything again there. Passed all my exams, raving, nightlife, girlfriends, drinking, everything like this. But one of the things that still stuck with me, because there was a conflict that I was going through, in that I've been raised with values. My mum had raised me with values. The group I was with, my gang, we had some values. We respected our mums. And one thing my mum told me was, treat any woman like you'd like to see me and your sister treated. And that stayed with me to this day. And so, yes, we were gallists and we were into women and everything like that, but we won't do some of the really disgusting things that I know that people do with women today and everything, the gang thing and the rapes. We weren't into that whatsoever, and we didn't have anyone around us who was into that. So I remember when I started going out, the conflict I was having was this good moral side. That was there, but then there was this road mad thing side of me, which was tempting as well. So I channeled that with violence. When anything was going on, to be, let's go. And we would be into the gang thing and violence. But then the moral side was like, I've got to move in a direction that's righteous. I've been raised in a way, there's some righteousness. So I always had that conflict. That always happened. And some may laugh at it now, but I remember I would rave, I would do some badness. And then I would go to church, the Catholic church. I would go on a Saturday or a Sunday, and I'd sit in the confession box and say to the Father, Father, forgive me for I have sinned. And I would start telling him some of the stuff that I'd done, but I'd pause because I thought, I can't tell him this. I can't tell him that. Yes, when you say Father, you're talking to the priest. As Catholics, when you go in and speak to the priest in the confession box, he's not supposed to, you don't see him, he doesn't see you, he's not supposed to know who you are. So you'd say to him, the priest, Father, forgive me for I have sinned. So I questioned that at that stage there for two reasons. I asked when I was going to classes for Catholicism to become baptized and everything, confirmed as we said, I said, why do I have to come to you and ask you? And then when I've come to you, you've told me, because they used to say to me, right, go and say 5 Hail Marys, go and pray to Mary. Oh, there's a statue of Mary in the church. Or go and pray to Jesus. So these two things confuse me. And I would ask in my confirmation classes, why do I have to come to you to ask you for forgiveness? And why then do you send me to go and pray to Jesus or Mary? So he said this to me, he said, you have to come to me, I'm a representative of God on earth, and then I will tell you to go to Mary, the Mother of God, astaghfirullah, or go to pray to Jesus, because God is so pure, we are sinful, that there needs to be a mediator who has come for our sins. And this never ever stuck with me. I never ever understood it. I still kept going though, because my conscience kept saying, when I did something bad, when I was doing badness outside, I'd quietly go to the church and do this. And that carried on right up to near when I became a Muslim. This was a sort of like, you've done this badness, now go to church and ask for forgiveness. You've done this badness. I even became a born-again Christian at one point. And at that point, what happened, I was in college, and some of the girls, I had a lot of friends there who liked me and everything, but some of the black girls who were Christians came to me and said, look, Tony, we see you're a good guy, this, that and the other, and look, we feel you need to go in this direction. And they saw that resonated with me. I said, no, I've given up on church because I was a Catholic, I didn't understand this. So I said, look, there's a big preacher coming to QPR. This is when QPR had their new AstroTurf. You need to come and see him. His name was Luis Palau from Argentina. And I went with them. I thought, let me just go see what he's saying. And I listened to him. The stadium was full. The side that they were speaking to was full. And he was talking about the ills of the world, the corruption, everything like this. And all of that, I felt it. It resonated with me. So then I thought, yeah, I'm going to try again. I'm going to become a born-again Christian. And I'm going to try again and move all this badness from me again. Now, when I went down to say I want to give myself up to the faith again, the man pointed on the stage and he said, do you see that? And I was thinking, what's he talking about? I don't see it. I just want to become a born-again Christian. What do I have to do? He goes, look on the stage. I said, what is it? Then he pointed, he goes, look, and he was pointing to this big crucifix. And in my heart sank. I was like, oh, here we go again. What I went through as a Catholic, I'm going to have to go through going to Jesus again. But I said, let me see if this is different. So I'd go to prayer meetings, we'd be sitting, we'd be opening up the Bible, they'd say Tony or Anthony, they wanted me to feel special. Anthony, what do you get from these messages? So I'd read about Abraham in the Old Testament, Ibrahim. I'd read about him, and some things I felt and some things I didn't. And I'd give my own explanation, and then the others would start saying, praise be to God, wisdom. I was saying to myself, hold on, I could be saying anything about this without knowledge, and you're telling me it's wisdom. But one of the things that got me, and it stuck with me, and I said, I can't understand this, is there's a verse in the Bible, in Genesis, where it says that Abraham wrestled with God and beat him. And God had to damage his sciatic nerve in his hip to let him get him out of a headlock. And for me as an individual, I was like, no. This is not what I know about God. God is great. God is unequal to anything. He's all powerful. So basically a prophet wrestling with God and winning. And my heart said this cannot happen. So this made me start moving away from the religion again.
And I think Tony had what Jacob had that night. He had a look of desperation in his eyes. And God came down in human form, is what the Bible just said. He named his place Peniel because I have been face to face with God and survived. This wasn't no ordinary wrestling match. And so that night, as Jacob is wrestling, and this is a God-inspired thing, and he's I don't want to face it. I don't want to face it. And so finally, God touches his hip. And then the Bible says that the day was dawning. The sun was coming. And finally he was like, okay, we've been at this all night. And so he touched him on his hip, and his hip shrunk. And so the man then goes, please let go of me. Why are you holding on? And Jacob said, I will not let you go until you bless me.
He wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now, this is something you have to understand about God. When he sees that the day is breaking, when he sees that he's running out of time, he escalates the fight. He escalates the fight. He says, I got to bring this to a quick halt because he's running out of time. Now, you see, God don't run out of time. And he don't get old. And he don't lose strength. And he don't need anything. But you are running out of time. And when God sees that the day is about to break, he says, I've got to do something to bring this wrestling match to a place of surrender. I got to bring it to a close. I got to stop the fight. I got to stop the struggle. I got to stop the war. Come on up here, Ernest, and stand with me. This is my brother. Say amen for my brother. Thank you. And we're in a fight. And they're struggling one against another. The Lord and I are in a fight, pushing and shoving. No.
God is wrestling with him. It says in verse 25 that when the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of socket. And then he said to the man, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. Interesting. It's kind of an interesting statement there for him to say that when the man saw that Jacob was overpowering him, or when he saw that he would not win the match. Well, that just kind of blows my mind, because, Ed, you're telling me that this is God wrestling with Jacob, that God thinks he's going to lose the match? God finally got Jacob in the posture and a position where Jacob was at the end of himself. He had come to the end of his own strength, all night long of fighting against God, his whole entire life culminating in this moment. He had finally got to the point he was exhausted, all strength had left, all the tenacity had left, all of those things had just completely depleted from fighting not only his whole life, but that whole night fighting with God. And finally, he gets to the point for the first time in his life where he grabs onto God and he says, I'm going to cling to you. I'm going to cling on to you, and I am not going to let you go until you bless me.
In the Bible, which is supposed to be a book of God, that God was beaten by a man in this way. For me, it was blasphemy. So I moved away I moved away from Christianity again, and I said, you know, I'm going to go into my street culture, and that's what I immersed myself in. And in that, we developed our own religion, we developed our own code, we developed our own morals, what was good, what was wrong. That's how we were. Now, moving on from college, my career was going quite well. My career started moving very well. I started working in the legal profession, Crown Prosecution Service. I did well there. My girlfriend and I decided we wanted to buy a place, so we bought our first place. And things were settling down, things were moving really, really well in that. Life was good, I was with the woman that I loved, night clubbing, money, more money that I could have hoped for, nice cars, my first car was an Audi. Things were going really, really well in that sense. But I still had that other side. We were doing some of the bad things that we were doing, some of the badness. Some of the things that we were getting up to with regards to the duality of my lifestyle. For example, when we used to go and rave, my posse, South London, Tooting, and going up to Brixton, we would number about 30, 40 of us. We were tight. Now, I've also mentioned my group, my gang as we would say now. We called ourselves, we gave ourselves a name because we wanted to have an identity, and we called ourselves SWS. That initially stood for Southwest Syndicate. Because we're from Southwest London, we're from Tooting. And those who know South London, compared to the rest of London, whenever we used to go to nightclubs, whenever we went anywhere around London and even the country, the DJ would always shout, and he would start first with maybe East London. And East London was quiet. You hear a little bit of noise. West London, a little bit louder. North London, a little bit louder. When he called out how many people from South London are in the house, the place shook. And South London still has that respect today. Maybe I'm being a bit partisan, but that's how it was with South London. But so we called ourselves Southwest Syndicate. Then we would meet up with another 40, 50, and we would move off to Birmingham, we'd move off to Derby, we'd move up to Nottingham. And when we were moving up in coaches, what we would do is we'd stop at the service stations and we would raid the service stations of everything and then come back onto the coaches. And on one occasion, the police turned up. And I remember we had to put everything on the top of the coach through the grids at the top to hide everything. So the police came on, they won't come on the coach because they saw how many of us were there. It's like one of them said, oh gosh, it's dark in here because there's all black guys. And so they won't come on. As the coach drove off now, I remember it was funny for us, all the stuff that was on the top of the coach fell off the back. And we basically stood by the coach driver with a tool and told him, don't stop. So all the way back to London, his foot was down. And the two or three coaches coming down. And we used to love that. We'd go into different areas. There was trouble sometimes. We would get involved in that trouble. Most of the time it was fun, raves like this. One of the incidents that happened with the clubs is that we went to a club. It was one of our guys' birthday, one of our brethren's birthday, his youngest birthday. And what actually happened is that when we were in there, he got into an incident. He got into an incident where some individuals rushed him, attacked him. He came out to us, because there were so many of us, we circled the whole floor. We took over the whole dance floor and circled the individuals ready to do them something. The owners of the club now, it's called Raw, just off Tottenham Court Road. The owners of the club came to us and said, look, can you leave? We're going to send them out of one door. We're going to send you out of another door. We know you guys, you can come back next week, it's not a problem. So we went peacefully, we said, all right, cool. We left. But the weeks after that now, we started getting messages from the club, from the bouncers, that we were idiots, we were this, we were that, we were weak. They were telling our girls. My girlfriend would come back and say they're insulting you guys. Other women would come back, they said you lot are not coming because you're scared, you're this, you're that. So one night now, we said to ourselves, you know what, we got to put a stop to this. 26 of us were doing a show just up the road in Soho, and we had a younger group from us now. A younger group called BBS from Croydon. They wanted to join up with us too, and we wanted to give them an initiation. Can they really do things? Can they really move like us? So we did the show and we walked. quietly from Soho to the club. When we got to the club now, we shut it down. We looked to the side, we saw scaffolding, bottles, pipes, everything. And we said, okay, rush. We attacked the bouncers badly. They went to get reinforcements from downstairs to come up. When we rushed them, unlike what you see today, attack and then run, we attacked, they got up and they saw us still standing there. And we finished it. And this may seem like arrogance from my point. No, what I'm talking about, we were confident. We were confident in how we were. We saw ourselves as intelligent hoodlums. That you make trouble with us, we're going to finish it. We shut down this club. We shut it down properly. The police came, but we blended amongst the crowd, and they didn't catch anyone except 2 of my colleagues who got caught. Moving on from that, that was the sort of things that we were doing, and it was part of our lifestyle. And we had to make sure that we weren't getting caught, because I'd be at work the next day, suit and tie, in court, Your Honor, doing the cases like this. These were the 2, and for me it was exciting. Having these 2 things was exciting, but there was conflict. They couldn't stay together all of the time. With that violence taking place and the sort of risks that we were taking, again, when I was abroad and someone came into the nightclub looking for us, it was our nightclub, we were running the show, and they came in, guns, everything, and we weren't prepared for that because we were setting up for the show. And when they said they were looking for your leader, they were looking for the main man, and there were 2 of us. 2 of us were called Tony, Big T, and myself, to be. So then we saw now people are coming for us. It's getting more and more on top. Situations where we saw some of our individuals were being warned, and I want to come to that stage now where it got to the peak. And this was a changing point where I had to say I can't mix the 2 anymore. For me, it got on top when I had my own nightclub. And the club that I was given, it was called Patrick's Place. It was in Clapham North. And the club started building up slowly, surely, and people were hearing about it, and it was on cable TV and everything. And one day I was with my brethren, enough of us coming to open up. As I was opening up the club, I see some white guy, nice Crombie jacket, suit and tie, and he came up to me. He must have been about 6'4", and he put his hand on my shoulder and he started turning me. I tried to rough him off and everything, but he turned me to face across the road. My brethren started coming to what's this man doing to T? We're going to deal with him, we're going to deal with him. They turned me across the road. I saw a Stag, I saw a BM, a Beamer, I saw 3 other cars. White guys got out all suited, sawed-off shotguns, machine gun, pieces, and they all pointed them at me. Broad daylight. All the other people were just walking like nothing was happening. So he said to me, come with me, get in the car. Looked at my brethren, they couldn't do nothing. We didn't have any machines or anything like that. I was kidnapped. Kidnapped me, took me off. Now I was calm. On the outside, you just gotta be cool. And I had a guy sitting in the back. He had the machine just pointing at me. The other guys were driving. I thought, that's it. So I'm thinking, what is it that I've done? What crime have I done? What is it that has come back to haunt me? What is it? I didn't know. I didn't have an idea of what's happening. The good thing, alhamdulillah, it wasn't for something I'd done. They took me somewhere, and they took me. So they said, right, we need you to tell us who can get you out of this. So there was a woman that I knew. I said, go to her place, and it was in a block of flats. It's an estate. So they went, took up there. They went upstairs with their arms. This guy sat in the back, ready to just cock the trigger and kill me if I was putting him in a setup. She came out. Alhamdulillah, she came out. She saw what was going on the balcony. She looked down and she saw me sitting in the back of the seat of the car, and she knew it was on top. So she came down. They took us somewhere else. They compared her account with my account. That, look, this man, I ain't seen him, don't know where he's at, everything like that. And they said, you know what? You've told the truth. We're gonna let you go. Now, when that happened to me, I've not been kidnapped before. Yes, we know about kidnapping others and doing all of this sort of stuff. Yeah, but being kidnapped at gunpoint in broad daylight, thinking your life is over, makes you think differently. And my brethren, they came to me and they said, we couldn't do anything. We thought that was the last we were going to see of you. We didn't know what to think about it. We didn't have our machines. We didn't have anything. So all of us did a sort of check, like, is this the way that we want to keep going? Is this the sort of lifestyle that we want to keep going and move into in that way? And it was from that point that the changes came. At that point is when I decided I need to make a significant change in the direction I'm going in. Am I going to still have these parallel lives where I've got a perfectly good life, I've bought my second home, I've had 2, 3, 4 cars, Audis, my wife, my missus, my girlfriend is there, we're getting engaged to get married, life is good, but there's this other side that kept pulling me, this dark side, the side that could ruin everything. Sometimes I'm not home and my missus is thinking, is he dead? Sometimes I haven't called her for days, she's thinking, is he in a jail cell? And they couldn't handle that, the stress of that. Dead or in jail? And I said to myself, if you've got a channel that you need to take, but just having a career wasn't enough. There was something missing inside. I felt, yes, intellectually I was blessed. Financially I was blessed. Physically I had what I wanted, women, drinks, drugs, everything like that. But there was another part, and it was the spiritual part. And some of my friends were looking at Christianity and I was like, no, I've gone there. I don't get this thing with the Trinity and everything. I've gone there. So that side was killing me. That was the side that was killing me. And that started getting worse. So for example, we were making music. We had an incident where some of my guys went and they shut down a newspaper. Went in, there's a black magazine, went in there, didn't like what they'd written about one of the songs that we put out, and they went and shut it down. That was a mistake from our part, because we didn't know that we were treading on toes that were much bigger than ours. So when we received a phone call from one of the leading gang figures from the 60s who sent certain people to us, we realized we're in a bit of a situation now. Now, they saw that as a move to take over parts of South London. That wasn't the case. We'd just been disrespected. And one of the things about us is that if you disrespected us and didn't make amends, we will come for you. We didn't look for trouble, but we ended it. This was one of the policies that we had. So when we got this phone call from a big gangland figure, let's put it this way. The Crays were his rival. Then we realized we got in deep. I went to Spain for a holiday, only to be told that my friends, we were doing one of our raves, we used to hold raves under the Arches, Vauxhall and other places, that as I came back and they picked me up from the airport, they said a particular celebrity who worked with this gangland figure had turned up, guns, everything, looking for me and those who were the head of our posse. So we realised we were into a serious situation. And did we have machines? Did we have things? We had some, but these lot were much bigger, more accomplished than us. We were in our late teens, early 20s in this sense here. So this side was beginning to spiral out of control. Now we managed to solve that peacefully with this particular individual. He sent people after us outside my home. 2 cars, his henchmen, white guys sitting there, waiting outside my work. My other friends getting phone calls. So we knew that. And we realised we're getting in really deep, but because of our pride, we weren't going to go like, oh, we're going to run and be scared, because we knew that that would be a negative thing in itself. So I'm doing that in my nightlife, and in the daytime, I'm working in the legal profession. I've got my own 225 of my own cases. I'm going to courts. These buildings behind me are familiar. The courts of justice down the road were familiar, and I was doing well. I was the only black guy in my firm, earning money, my salary was going up, buying new cars, police stopping me, how come you're driving this car? Showed them the papers, it's my car. Things were going well, but when I left work, the nightlife. And I'll give you a classic example of the conflict. We were at Carnival. Another riot ensued, or disturbances you might say. When it got to night time, you saw some mischief was being done. But we tried to stay out of that mischief and get ourselves onto the underground. But the police weren't having that. What they did is followed us onto the underground. What they then did is attack me on the train. Threw me off the carriage. About 7 of the 10 of us who were there got into a fight with the police. The way they fought us and threw us down, cuffed us from behind. One of my friends was cuffed with those plastic straps 4 times, all the way up to his arms here, because he was big. They separated us, took us to the police station. I've got scars still from the way they cuffed us and everything. And then they brought us to Paddington. From Ladbroke Grove, they brought us to Paddington police station. I was worried at that time because I'd started my career as a trainee lawyer. I was working in Holborn as in a legal firm, good business, no criminality before. And this was the start where I saw my whole career was going to end. And the case that the police officers put against me, and I've still got their statements to this day, the lies they told in the statement, the way they concocted it, put us in a very bad situation. We went to court. The court case was a fiasco. It was in Crown Court, then they reduced the charges and put us in the Magistrates Court. Through the series of hearings now, some of my friends got off, some of them were found guilty, and they were given just fines. When it came to me, because I worked in the legal profession, because my boss, who was a senior lawyer, who owned the firm, came and gave evidence, because I had decent people come in and giving representation. I won my case. They had to overturn the suspended jail sentence and all the fines and everything like this, so I didn't lose my career. I managed to sue the police and everything for wrongful imprisonment and brutality and everything like that. But all these things were coming together, and I knew in myself that sooner or later I'm going to be either dead or in jail. I've mentioned already about the amount of stop and search, which meant that we built up a hatred for the police. A hatred for the police. As we grew older and became more conscious, more black conscious, we changed the name to Strength Within Strength, up until the point I embraced Islam. I want to talk about that whole SWS experience with my friends, how we were and everything like that. We made music, we did rap music, we were doing conscious lyrics, talking about the government, talking about the police, how we hated the police and everything like that, our experience with the police. One thing that permeated every aspect of my life, right up until I became a young adult, was music. And music could shape our moods. Music could shape when we were happy, sad, angry, we were whatever we were actually doing. It was a religion. Music was a religion. Even the records, now you don't have records so much, I know there's a revival, but records were, I'd buy the most valuable. I would travel abroad. I would hear that there's a particular album that was in Belgium, Antwerp, and I would travel to Antwerp just to get that album. I would go and travel around the country to get that album. And when I got that record and we were listening to that record, you couldn't disturb me. I may be listening to a song or a tune and there's a particular part of that tune I was coming to and you could not disturb me. My brethren knew if they knocked on the door of my home, they had to wait outside. My missus would tell them, you can't disturb him yet. I worshipped music. Worshipped, and I mean that. If the sun is shining, it's a particular time of the day, and there's a tune that we would know. When we were in the docks having our court case, and the judge was speaking, we'd be bringing Cooley G, or one of these, court is now in session, and you'd hear one of us rapping. When we were sitting in the court, in the docks, we were not only giving lyrics to each other, we were rolling spliffs in the docks. We were rolling. This is how arrogant we were. The judge obviously didn't see that, and the people couldn't see that. But music permeated every part of our lives. If we were dealing with a man, beating someone, if we were with our women, everyone knows their love tunes and everything like that. The music did everything for us. So I realized when I was getting older, before I became a Muslim, music was a difficult thing to let go. Music dominated that much that even my circles, if you were into a particular type of music and I wasn't into that particular type of music, you and me couldn't move together. We won't be brethren. We won't be sistering. You are not in my world. That is how it was. I worked as a bouncer, security, in clubs and Hammersmith Odeon and things like this. And we did that. I'd be at work in the day, again, the conflict. I'd be at work in the day, legal profession, then I'd be leaving work, putting on my jacket, Seymour security, going to do the shows, fighting in the evening, doing what we're doing in the evening. Then I go back to work the next day, bruised knuckles, few cuts. My boss would say, what's happened? I was at work. And he'd just look at me, because like, why do you do this? But that was the life. And I was doing the security because I loved the concerts. I loved the shows. When it was musicians that we knew, bands that we knew, it's like, yeah, this was the life for me. This was the life. I was working and I was fulfilling that desire of what I worshipped, music. We met, I remember when Ice-T came over. He went to Capitol, Westwood, and we met him outside. And he had his wife then, Darlene. So we went to meet him, and it shocked me because I was hearing all these gangster lyrics from him and everything like that. And I'm not saying that he wasn't that, but when he saw us now coming to meet him, he ran to the car. He ran to the car, and we're saying to him, yo, Ice-T, we're from SWS, we just want to say what's going on. And then what he did is he pulled his wife and said, Darlene, meet these guys. And for me, that respect went from him from that point there, that he pushed her forward. But anyway, he agreed to meet us. So we went back to the hotel where he was. He was staying somewhere in Earl's Court. And we sat with him for 5 hours. And we were chatting, talking about us. And what I realized is that from his background, now he was seeing he can make money from it. Now we wanted to be more commercialized. And so after we sat with him then, we didn't stay in touch with him again after that. I was a bit disappointed. Our tracks were underground. They were being played on the radio. Even we saw when we was walking through Tooting, some of the youths would be looking out and giving the lyrics because they knew the lyrics that we were doing and everything. And then we met individuals like Professor Griff from Public Enemy. Now Public Enemy were the group at the time, and he'd just broken off from them, or they'd asked him to leave. So we met him as well. And when we met him, he said he wanted us to bring some of the tunes, our latest tunes that we were going to be bringing, our latest songs. So we went, and there was a song we called Rebel, and it's very, very hardcore. So one of our rappers gave him the lyrics, and we were shocked at his response. He said, this is too hardcore, you're not going to get radio play. We said, it's not about radio play, this is what we believe in. You're talking about governments, you're talking about South Africa and apartheid. It was the apartheid, the segregation at that time. And he was saying to us, that is too hardcore. And we said, Professor Griff, we've listened to your lyrics. He said, yeah, but that's just like, for show. And we looked at him like, you're fake. You're telling me you're fake like this. He was going on this show, this really rubbish show called The Hitman and Her. Nothing underground, anything. And we advised him, you don't want to go on there for your credibility. He said, no, I want to go on there, I want to go on there. When we saw the insincerity amongst these individuals, that's what made me start looking at this music that I'm into. It doesn't take you in a good direction. If you want to get more known, if you want to get your message across, you have to become commercial. You have to sell out. You have to sell your soul. You have to do things to get there. So for me, I said, I can't do this. It didn't wash with me. I couldn't do it. We put out one commercial song, and I wouldn't even tell anyone what that was. And it was with all the boxers, Frank Bruno, all the great boxers of that time. And I listened to it, and I'm like, this is embarrassing. This is not us. So we started realizing then, amongst our group, the music cannot sustain us. It cannot sustain us. And that's when I realized, well, if you're not worshipping music, I have to go back into one direction. My soul is not being filled. It wasn't being filled. And I felt I was dying from inside. I had everything else, but I was thinking, I'm not doing anything to my soul. I can't go back to Christianity. I'm not going to go back here. What else is there? And that's when I had, I think, the fundamental, final, significant impact upon me, which has brought me to where I am today. The thing that music did for me, when realizing that the worship was the wrong thing, was that it made me realize, and I think my friends realized, that we had no direction. There was no direction. Music was shallow in itself. If we wanted to take that forward, the message that we had was too hardcore that people wouldn't want to listen to that. But one thing we did take out from that, because at that time we were hearing about Islam. Professor Griff had Allah's name mentioned in the music. We were hearing about other groups speaking about Islam. So that's what really stoked my attention. Say, what are we looking about Islam? The adhan was being called. Before, I used to hear the adhan in horror movies, but we're hearing the adhan in music now, and it was coming from black music. So we started exploring, what are these people on? Some were saying I'm Muslim, some were saying I'm 5%. We were learning about Nation of Islam, and we saw the blackness that they were calling to, and again the social problems and everything that black people were having.
The characteristics of the white man is evil. He was made like that through nature, now we say. Naturally he was made like that. And the white man, we say, is the devil. Why? Because of his weak, physically coming into being from original man.
But one of the reasons why we didn't explore that, some went in that direction, but we looked at it and said, what, the white man is the devil? I've got white brethren who are tight friends with me from childhood. And you're going to tell me the white man's the devil? I can't be in any faith that's telling me that about a different race.
They call Mr. Muhammad a black supremacist because he teaches you and me not only that we're as good as the white man, but better than the white man. Yes, better than the white man. You are better than the white man. And that's not saying anything. That's not saying, you know where just to be equal with him. Who is he to be equal with? You look at his skin. You can't compare your skin with his skin. While your skin look like gold beside his skin. You find that old pale thing laying out in the sun, trying to get to look like you. That old pale thing.
In 1963, Malcolm X became national spokesman for the Nation of Islam.
You find him using man pain, trying to look like you. That old pale thing.
So my question now was, how can I go into a religion that says this? But it's when we started looking more deeply. The only Asian friend who joined us, when he heard us talking, that there must be more to life. There must be more to life. And he said, Islam. We said, no, Islam is for the Asians and for the Arabs. He said, no, it's not. Islam is for mankind. The final prophet came for mankind. And he bought me a Quran.
In April 1964, Malcolm traveled to Saudi Arabia. For some time, he had been studying Orthodox Islam. Now he arrived in Jeddah on his way to perform the Hajj, a pilgrimage required of all Muslims. Members of the Saudi royal family helped him gain entry to the holy city of Mecca.
My first impression of him was an eye-opener, because I saw a different person totally. I didn't see the fiery fire breather. I saw a very timid, almost shy man.
When a person performs a Hajj, there are certain rituals through which he has to go. All people have to dress in the same simple way. And as such, you cannot distinguish during the Hajj any people on account of their status, on account of their national origin. It is a demonstration of human brotherhood.
Because everybody was in this white garb, the rich, the poor, the powerful, the weak, the sick, everybody. And they were all intermingled. And I think that had such a profound impact on Malcolm.
Greetings from the ancient land of Arabia. Allah has blessed me to visit the holy city of Mecca, where I witnessed pilgrims of all colors, and all colors is underlined, from all parts of this earth, displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood like I've never seen before. It is truly a sight to behold. El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, and I guess maybe he thought I wouldn't know who that was, so in parentheses he has Malcolm X.
Malcolm's letters to his followers made news back in America and raised the question, had he changed his position on race?
He does speak of brotherhood, the brotherhood of all races, colors, and so on in the Holy Land.
He says there were tens of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world. They were of all colors, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans, but were all participating in the same ritual, displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood that my experiences in America had led me to believe could never exist between the white and the non-white.
But he has backtracked a little from the position that all white men are devils if he's saying that.
I wouldn't say that he has backtracked. One can make an adjustment in one's direction without it being backwards. When you say that he has backtracked, it seems as though that you imply you would prefer that he call white people devils and not to call them devils, that he's going in the wrong direction.
Nobody likes to be called a devil.
Oh, well, then you wouldn't consider it a backtrack if he stopped calling white people devils, then would you?
After his pilgrimage, Malcolm spent 3 weeks in Africa. On May 21st, 2 days after his 39th birthday, he returned to New York.
Malcolm, have your experiences with white-skinned Muslims in Africa and the Middle East made you feel that relations between Negroes and whites who are not Muslims is any more possible?
When I was on the pilgrimage, I had close contact with Muslims whose skin would in America be classified as white, and with Muslims who themselves would be classified as white in America. But these particular Muslims didn't call themselves white. They looked upon themselves as human beings, as part of the human family, and therefore they looked upon all other segments of the human family as part of that same family. Now, they had a different look or a different air or a different attitude than that which is reflected in the attitude of the man in America who calls himself white.
Malcolm, on your trip abroad, you said you sensed a feeling of great brotherhood, and that conceivably you would be working toward integration in this country now. At least this is what you're reported to have said. Have you any comment on it?
If I recall, I'm pointed out that while I was at Mecca making the pilgrimage
I spoke about the brotherhood that existed at all levels and among all people who were there on that Hajj, who had accepted the religion of Islam. And I pointed out that for what it had done, what the religion of Islam had done for those people over there, despite their complexion differences, that it would probably do America well to study the religion of Islam, and perhaps it could drive some of the racism from this society. I would say this, that the pilgrimage at Mecca is an anthropologist, would be an anthropologist's paradise, because it's the only event and the only spot on earth that has every specimen of humanity in the same place at the same time, practicing brotherhood and in harmony. It's the only place where I've ever seen brotherhood practiced by people of all races, of everything.
Has this been a religious experience?
Definitely, I went because of my religious beliefs, and I think that I have a better understanding of my religion. I was a state guest while I was there for 12 days of Prince Faisal, who is the present leader of the government. He made everything available to me to give me every opportunity to get a better understanding of the religion of Islam. When I first got there, I was in a compound because it wasn't known that I was there. And once they found out I was there, they put me in a suite at the Jeddah Palace Hotel, gave me a car with a chauffeur and a mutawif who could speak Arabic and take me wherever I wanted. I could go back and forth between Mecca and Jeddah every night if it was my desire. I have never been given more hospitality and treated with more brotherhood than I was treated in Arabia by the Muslims there. Malcolm,
are you prepared to go into the United Nations at this point and ask that charges be brought against the United States for its treatment of American Negroes?
Oh, yes.
Do you intend to lead the charge in the United Nations?
Well, I find that to say you're going to lead something creates a lot of hostility, division, jealousy, and envy. I hope to work with any group of leaders or any group of organizations to do whatever is necessary to see that this problem is brought before the United Nations.
I think what a lot of people are interested in, Malcolm, is whether this experience has made you feel that your feelings have changed, that the animosity you have expressed in the past toward all whites.
There's one thing that I want to make clear. No matter how much respect, no matter how much recognition whites show toward me, as far as I'm concerned, as long as that same respect and recognition is not shown toward every one of our people in this country, it doesn't exist for me. Please don't do that applauding.
Malcolm, the more controversial remarks was a call for black people to get rifles and form rifle clubs sometime back. Do you still favor that for self-defense?
I don't see why that should be controversial. I think that if white people found themselves the victim of the same kind of brutality that black people in this country face, and they saw that the government was either unwilling or unable to protect them, that the intelligence on the part of the whites would make them get some rifles and shotguns and protect themselves. Now, Negroes are developing some kind of intellectual maturity too, and they can see that by having waited upon the government to protect them has been a wait that has been in vain. So any of them who live in areas where the government is not able to do its job, then we do have to get together and do a job of protecting ourselves.
And this is what I had to become aware of on my pilgrimage to Mecca.
That's a considerable change of opinion in Malcolm X.
No, today I'm speaking for myself. Formerly I spoke for Elijah Muhammad. And everything I said was, Elijah Muhammad teaches us thus and so. I'm speaking now from what I think, from what I have seen, from what I have analyzed, and the conclusions that I have reached.
Then the white man is no longer the devil, and he is no longer bound to be evil?
If I judge a man by his conscious behavior, I am not a racist. I don't subscribe to any of the tenets of racism.
Mr. X, I guess I call you that. Is that the proper appellation, yes. Mr. X? I'm wondering if you still believe, as I think you certainly did at the time you were allied with the Black Muslim movement, in a segregated black nation in North America.
I don't believe in any form of segregation or any form of racism. I'm against any form of segregation and against racism.
Am I right in saying that the black Muslim movement, which you have left, did believe in that?
Well, Elijah Muhammad taught his followers that the only solution was a separate state for black people.
Are you still a Muslim yourself?
Oh, yes. I'm a Muslim. I believe in the religion of Islam, which believes in brotherhood, complete brotherhood of all people.
The attempt was made upon my life because I speak my mind and I know too much, and they know that I will speak it whether they like it or not. And, sir, yes, I do believe there'll be further attempts on my life. I know them. They're foaming at the mouth. Elijah Muhammad knows. He knows that if he had wanted to, he could have united our people with the Muslim world just by teaching the right religion of Islam. He could have done so. The entire Muslim world would have accepted him. As it is now, the Muslim world has rejected him. He can never go into the Muslim world saying that he's a prophet or that Allah came over here in the flesh. They would cut his head off if he said that over there. I mean, he knows this. None of his followers can go over there without denouncing him. It's impossible for them to go to Mecca or any other place unless they ascribe to Islam as it is ascribed to over there.
Do you feel that your message, apparent message of love that you brought back from Islam is the real reason they're after you, because you're not hating as hard as they want you to?
Well, I never did hate anybody hard. But I do know that when I wrote that letter saying that there were white people in Mecca, it shook up a lot of Muslims, because most of the Muslims who follow Mr. Muhammad absolutely believed that it was impossible, physically impossible, I should say divinely impossible, for a white person to go to Mecca. And my trip there shattered that image, or that misconcept.
Anyone call you directly, Malcolm?
I've been receiving calls ever since I left the black Muslim movement.
And what sort of calls, Malcolm? You're disenchanted in view of the fact that these men who were your brothers are making threats against your life?
No, because actually it's not their fault. Most of them, now Joseph and the officials, they have a knowledge of what it's all about. But the rank-and-file Muslim brother does not know what it's all about. They are, out of religious sincerity, they think that they are doing the will of Allah by protecting a man who I myself taught them was divine. So I don't in any way fault them. But those who are over them and give the orders, and actually the ultimate order comes from Elijah Muhammad himself.
Why are they threatening your life?
Well, primarily because they're afraid that I will tell the real reason that that I'm out of the black Muslim movement, which I never told. I kept to myself. But the real reason is that Elijah Muhammad, the head of the movement, is the father of 8 children by 6 different teenage girls, 6 different teenage girls who were his private personal secretary. The one who first made me aware of this was Wallace Muhammad, Mr. Muhammad's son. I had stated in a newspaper article about an effort to take my life back in January, and at that time the Muslims denied it. In fact, they tried to make it appear to my brother that I was insane. But on a program in Chicago called Hotline, that's moderated by Wesley South, John Ali, the national secretary, admitted, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, one of these days last week, that they absolutely were going to kill me.
What steps
would you take to protect yourself from this threat? I take no steps. I have a rifle. If anybody comes to my house without a good reason, I intend to try and use it. That's all.
In view of these threats, are you concerned about your own life right now?
No, I don't worry. I tell you, I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
You mean he was going to kill you?
I wanted you to know that my house was bombed. It was bombed by the black Muslim movement upon the orders of Elijah Muhammad. Now they had come around they had planned to do it from the front and the back so that I couldn't get out. They covered the front completely, the front door. Then they had come to the back, but instead of getting directly in the back of the house and throwing it this way, they stood at a 45-degree angle and tossed it at the window, so it glanced and went onto the ground. And the fire hit the window, and it woke up my second oldest baby. But the fire burned on the outside of the house. But had that one gone through that window, it would have fallen on a 6-year-old girl, a 4-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old girl. And I'm going to tell you, if it had done it, I'd taken my rifle and gone after anybody in sight. I would not wait. The police know the criminal operation of the black Muslim movement because they have thoroughly infiltrated it. That's what I said. The Muslims claim I bombed my house. And if anybody can find where I bombed my house, they can put a rifle bullet through my head. It was my children and my own life and my wife's life that was at stake. You know what the degree, what temperature was? It was about 15 or 20. I stood in my underwear, bare feet, in the middle of my driveway with a gun in my hand for 45 minutes, waiting for the police or waiting for the fire department to come. If I want to put on a show, I can find a better way than that to put it on. But if you attack me, that's one thing. I know what to do when you start attacking me. But when you attack sleeping babies while you are lower than a god...
Are you not, perhaps, afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh, yes. I probably am a dead man already.
Malcolm came in, and I escorted him from about the middle of the ballroom to the wings backstage. When I got there, I had noticed there were some people already present. And there was 3 people sitting on the first row. They were sitting there reading newspapers. Nobody's paying them any mind. And Malcolm was still in the back. Benjamin Goodman came out, and he opened up the meeting.
I opened up for him. And he had sat down behind me, and he said, "Make it plain." Make it plain is the code word that he used for us to bring him forward. So anyway, I did. I brought Minister Malcolm forward. He didn't like a lot of ice and, you know, here's Minister Malcolm the Great and all that. He didn't like that. Just plain, you know.
Then I heard a lot of shots. And I looked up, and these 3 that were sitting across the front are now working their way from Malcolm's right to Malcolm's left, shooting at him.
I saw my husband falling back. He didn't bend, he just fell straight. And then I forgot my children. I tried to get to him.
I was facing the assassins, so I saw them stand up and take my father's life. An image that I wondered if I could have prevented it.
And I had this little black radio on that table, and I clicked the radio on as I stood there thinking about what had happened the night before, turned towards the stove to pick up my coffee, and the flash came through on this station and said Malcolm had been assassinated. And I froze.
I was in the home of Jewish family. And they said very casually that Malcolm X has been assassinated. Then someone said, after all, he was anti-Semitic, and I took exception to this, knowing full well he was not. Then I excused myself, and I went into that bathroom and cried about 15 minutes.
when we started looking more deeply, the only Asian friend who joined us, when he heard us talking, that there must be more to life. There must be more to life. And he said, Islam is for mankind. The final prophet came for mankind. And he bought me a Quran. Red hardback copy, Yusuf Pictal translation, he bought me it. Now, when I got that book, I opened it, and something amazing happened. This was the final transformation for me. I sat at home and opened from the first page. And when I read what is known as the opening in English, Surah Al-Fatiha, my heart shook. And I'm not just saying this for emotional reasons. When I saw the words, all praise is for Allah, Lord of the worlds, and then the rest of the surah, I said to myself, this is God. I went back to Christianity, looking at what happened there, having to pray to Mary, having to pray to Jesus, not being directed to God. The Bible talking about different things, and this verse, the first verse, saying about all praises are to Allah. And I read this, then I looked at other verses. When Surah Fatiha was saying to me, all praise is for Allah, God, Lord of all the worlds, the most merciful, the most gracious, Master, King of the Day of Judgment. The next verse now shook with me, where it said, you alone do we worship, and you alone do we seek help from. And this for me smashed everything off my path from Christianity. Praying to Mary, praying to Jesus, going to the priest in the church. You alone do we worship. Iyaka na'budu. You alone do we come to for help. Iyaka nasta'in. Then I saw the guidance part, what I'd been seeking all my life. Show us the straight path. Not just, and then after that, the path upon those whom you have shown your blessings. Not the path of those who have earned your anger or who have gone astray. Now when I read that verse there, when I read that chapter, I shut the Quran. I put it on the top shelf. My friends, later on they calling me. What's wrong, T, what's up? I said, this book. I said, what about it? My Asian friend said to me, what about it? I said, this wasn't written by a man, was it? He goes, no. He goes, that's right. T, that's right. We believe, Muslims believe, these are the words of God, of Allah. And I said, they must be, because no man could write this.
In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds. Maliki Yawmiddin, the Master of the Day of Judgment. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. You alone we worship, you alone we ask for help. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Show us the straight path. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Show us the straight path, the path of those you have favored, not the path who earn your anger, not the path of those who go astray.
When I saw other chapters, and this again, remember, no one came and spoke to me about Islam. My friend didn't speak to me about Islam. They were listening to us. We were seeking, what do we do? What do we do? We need guidance. There must be more to this world than this. Then I saw Surah Ikhlas. Say He is Allah the One. Not the three. Say He is Allah the One, the Eternal, the Absolute. He begets not, nor was He begotten, and there's none like unto Him.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
قل هو الله أحد.
Say, He is Allah, who is one.
الله الصمد.
Allah, the eternal refuge.
لم يلد ولم يولد.
He neither begets nor is born.
ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
Nor is there to him any equivalent.
For me, who had been raised as a Christian, for me that surah, that chapter, well, that was it. Fatiha, this, talking about the creation, the rest of the Quran saying what it was saying, talking about the Day of Judgment, everything like that. But you know what? The thing that still, I read all of that, and I still didn't take the step to become a Muslim. And then one night my friend came round my house, my close Cody, Big T, Aslam, and he said, you know, some of the younger lot, the younger crew, BBS, you know, some of them went and became Muslim the week before. I said, yeah, but they're listening to the rap music and they're following the rap music and they're hearing all this stuff about that. I said, I'm not down with that. Some of them are becoming Ansar Allah and what, white man's the devil and stuff, the Nation of Islam. I'm not down with all of that. He said, no, I'm talking about Islam, submission to God. I said, nah, I'm cool where I am. I've seen what religion has done. He then said to me, do you believe in the Day of Judgment? I said, you know, we've always believed in the Day of Judgment. Then he asked me the next question, which I wasn't able to answer. He said, okay, you believe in the Day of Judgment. What are you going to say to God on the Day of Judgment on why you didn't commit to him? I went really quiet. I got a bit upset with him because that was a question I couldn't answer. He said to me, okay, I hear what you're saying, T. I'm going to the mosque tomorrow. I'm taking my Shahada. I'm going to become a Muslim. Now, we heard about Shahada. We didn't know what Shahada meant, but he said, I'm going to become Muslim. And I let him go. He went, let himself out. I stayed in my chair, in my home. I did not move. Didn't go to the bathroom. Didn't do anything. My girlfriend, my fiance, came down, looked over the stairs. She just saw me sitting there. No drugs in my hand. No alcohol in my glass. No listening to music. She came back down the next morning, Sunday morning, and saw me still sitting in the chair. I hadn't slept. Then I looked at her and I said, I've got to go. And she knew what I meant. I went and had a shower. I didn't know where any mosque was. I'd never been to a mosque. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew somewhere down here there is a mosque. Because I'd met a brother and sister. I saw two Muslims one day in Tooting. And I'm going to digress a bit. And the behaviour of those Muslims. I saw the ticket man being rude to the woman, fully covered, wearing the veil, niqab and everything. And the brother was just being, the man was being very righteous, very calm. And I was vexed with that. I went up to the ticket man, how can you talk to religious people like this? I was ready to bang him up. But the brother, the Muslim man was calm. He goes, thank you, my friend. Don't worry. It's under control. I respect that. And I just looked at him. I didn't have any connection with him. And I said to myself, I asked him, I said, where do you go? And he said, I go to a place near Brixton police station. There's a new mosque there. So jumping back now, when I was jumping on the bus to go down to become a Muslim, I remembered what he said to me. I didn't know where any mosques were. So I got on the bus. Clean. No alcohol, nothing. Didn't know what I was actually going to do, but knowing that the Day of Judgment, that same question, what am I going to say to God on the Day of Judgment, looking at my life? What am I going to say? Got on the bus. It was funny because another one of my brethren from the posse, the younger group, he jumped on the bus and he looked a bit worried, and he said to me, I looked worried. And I said to him, where are you going? He goes, where are you going? I said, no, where are you going? He goes, no. I said, okay, I'm going to become a Muslim. He goes, so am I. For the rest of that journey, the 5-mile journey, we didn't speak. There wasn't excitement, high five, we were just quiet. I was thinking, my life is going to change. And I want it to work this time. Not like when I became a Christian, a born again Christian, and then jumped out of it because it was fake. I didn't like what they're saying, worship Jesus and everything. So we got to the mosque now, we found it. As we were going in, normal place, saw normal people like me. I looked at them, said I want to become a Muslim. They smiled, they said okay, come upstairs. He came upstairs. My brethren, Big T, Aslam, from yesterday, he was there. So we all sat down, the three of us, in the main prayer area, they asked us, do you know about the articles of faith? Do you believe in Allah, the angels, Day of Judgment? So when I went up and saw people wearing thobes, everything like that, I didn't know what was going to happen. When they said Shahada, I didn't know it was like an initiation ceremony. I'm going to have to run around in my underwear, hang out of the window. I didn't know. I was paranoid in that sense. So they sat down and they said, you're going to say these words slowly after us, and then we're going to tell you what it is that you've said. So then they said it, and I struggled a bit. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Now I struggled, and they said it again, I said it. They said, you've just said the heaviest words you're going to say in this life and the hereafter. I bear witness, I testify that there's no deity worthy of worship except Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad is his final slave and messenger. Some of them tuck beard. I saw grown men, hardened men, start crying. And I haven't seen men cry. I've not seen men cry before. From when I was a youth, never saw men cry. I saw these big men crying. Then they came and embraced me, embracing me, hugging me, everything. And they said, welcome to the brotherhood, the ummah of Islam. Now, we went downstairs to make wudu, and they explained about wudu, the ablution and the sins falling off, but I'd need to have a shower when I go home and everything like that. Then the adhan went. Now, I've mentioned there was 2 times I heard the adhan, in the music of the rappers and from the horror movies. But I remembered it from the horror movies, like The Exorcist and everything, and I froze. I said, what's that, what's that, what's that? And they said to me, what's wrong? I said, I heard this when I was growing up, in the horror movies, what is it? So then when they explained to me in English, Allah is great, Allah is great. You know, there's none worthy of worship except Allah twice. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah twice. Come to prayer, come to prayer, come to success. Allah is great, Allah is great, none deserves to be worshipped except him. And I realized that what had been fed to me as a child in these horror movies was to make me hate Islam, was to make me afraid of Islam. And when they explained those words to me, I love those words so much. That's why I'm living in Saudi Arabia, or in a Muslim country, that I hear this adhan 5 times a day. That is the life of my soul. That is the thing that reminds my soul of who I am. So now music was replaced. Music was replaced by a deen that filled me spiritually, physically, mentally. It completed everything. I didn't have to have this conflict between doing good and bad or anything like this anymore. And then I will conclude with this. When we came upstairs to pray, and I stood and I bowed and I went into sujood, into prostration, my body, my mind, my spirit, how I felt is that I'm now worshipping my Lord properly for the first time in my life. Him alone, Allah alone, my body, the humility of my prostration to him. Now today, as we look, everyone's looking at fashion and how they dress and everything. I thank Allah that I've got this prostration mark on my head from prayer, not to be shown off or anything. And some say, oh, don't you want to put cream on and cosmetics to blend your face, and don't you want to modify your photographs and everything? No, no, I worship Allah. The greatest thing that I have done in this life, and that I continue to do, even though Allah's blessed me to have a good career, even though I've got my MBA in education, even though I have a PhD, none of this will count in this life or the hereafter if I am not a servant of Allah, worshipping him in his oneness, in his tawheed. And after I did that first prayer, the way I felt to where I feel now, it cannot be replaced.